In 2009, Hugh Grant sat before Congress and said something most Americans never heard. Grant was the CEO of Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, the company that controls more of America's food supply than any foreign nation ever could. His exact words were, "If you put in the innovation, the reward should follow. Why shouldn't we be able to capture the total value of our intellectual property?" He was talking about seeds, not software, not smartphones, seeds. The thing humans have been saving and replanting for 10,000 years. That statement wasn't just corporate spin, it was a declaration of war on the oldest practice in agriculture. And it worked. Within a decade, saving seeds became illegal for most American farmers. The courtroom where that battle was lost wasn't in some dystopian future. It happened in 2013. The victim was a 75-year-old soybean farmer from Indiana named Vernon Bowman. You need to understand Bowman's story because it explains why your grocery bill has exploded, why family farms are disappearing faster than they did during the Great Depression, and why 4 corporations now control what you eat for breakfast. But everyone is focused on the wrong villain. They blame weather, they blame supply chains, they blame labor shortages. They are missing the much bigger mechanism buried in patent law that legally prohibits farmers from doing what farmers have always done. That mechanism has a name, and it triggers a cascading bankruptcy cycle that mirrors exactly what happened in the 1980s farm crisis, when 235,000 farmers lost everything. We will get to that specific legal trap and the Supreme Court decision that weaponized it in a moment. But first, you need to see how one elderly farmer became the test case for dismantling American agriculture. Vernon Bowman wasn't some corporate operation. He had been farming soybeans in Indiana since the 1960s. He did what every farmer before him had done. He bought soybeans from a grain elevator, the leftover mixed seeds from other farms, and he planted them. It cost him about $40 a bag. He harvested, he replanted some of those seeds the next season. It was the cycle that built civilization. But those soybeans contained something Bowman didn't ask for: Monsanto's patented Roundup Ready genes. These genes made the plants resistant to Monsanto's own herbicide, Roundup. Farmers didn't breed these genes into the crops. Monsanto inserted them in a lab, patented the genetic code, and sold the seeds with a contract. That contract said you could plant the seed once. You could not save the harvest and replant it. You had to buy new seeds every single year. Bowman didn't sign that contract. He bought commodity soybeans, not Monsanto's branded bags. But it didn't matter. Monsanto argued that because their patented genes were inside those soybeans, Bowman violated their intellectual property by replanting them. They sued him for $84,456. Bowman fought back. He took the case all the way to the Supreme Court. In 2013, the court ruled against him, 9-0. No dissent, no debate. The decision said that patent law applies to seeds the same way it applies to machines. You can't buy a patented tractor, reverse engineer it, build copies, and sell them. The court said seeds work the same way. Planting a patented seed and letting it reproduce is the same as copying a machine. That logic sounds reasonable until you realize what it actually means. A tractor doesn't reproduce itself. A seed does. That is the entire point of a seed. Reproduction is not a side effect, it is the biological function. The Supreme Court essentially ruled that a natural process, the thing seeds have done since the Cambrian explosion, is now intellectual property if a corporation has modified the genetic code. Bowman's legal fees topped $400,000. He nearly lost everything for doing what his grandfather did, what his great-grandfather did, what humans have done since the invention of farming. That case didn't just bankrupt one man, it set the legal precedent that turned agriculture into a subscription model.
Think of it like this. You buy a smartphone. You own the hardware, but you don't own the operating system. Apple owns iOS. You can't modify it, you can't repair it yourself, you can't install unauthorized software. Every year, Apple releases a new model, and eventually your old phone stops getting updates. You are locked into an ecosystem you can never leave. Farmers now live in that same trap. They buy the seed, which is the hardware, but Bayer owns the genetic code, which is the operating system. Farmers can't modify it, they can't save it, they can't replant it. Every year they must buy the new model or pay licensing fees, even though the core technology barely changes. Except unlike your iPhone, the seed is the only way they can grow food. There is no alternative app store. There is no Android equivalent. You buy from Bayer, Corteva, Chinachem,
or BASF. That is the entire market. And just like Apple, Bayer has made sure you can't opt out. In 1996, before this patent system dominated the market, you could buy a bag of corn for about $40. In 2024, that same bag costs between $300 and $400. That is a 650 to 750% increase. Inflation over the same period was only 95%. The seed companies will tell you this price reflects innovation, better yields, pest resistance, drought tolerance. Some of that is true, but the math doesn't add up. Corn yields per acre have increased roughly 30% since 1996. Seed costs have increased 650%. You are not paying for innovation, you are paying for monopoly control. Which brings us to the thing everyone is ignoring while they argue about tariffs and interest rates. 4 corporations now control 60% of the global seed market. Bayer, which bought Monsanto, Corteva, Chinachem, which owns Syngenta, and BASF. In 1996, the top 10 seed companies controlled only 37% of the market. In less than 30 years, the industry consolidated into an oligopoly that would make Standard Oil blush. The consolidation wasn't accidental, it was a deliberate strategy. Monsanto bought seed companies, then Bayer bought Monsanto. Dow and DuPont merged their agricultural divisions into Corteva. Chinachem bought Syngenta for $43 billion, the largest foreign acquisition of a US company at the time. Every merger reduced competition. Every acquisition gave the remaining players more pricing power. The FTC approved every single deal. The argument was always the same. The mergers would create efficiencies. Farmers would benefit from better technology. Prices would stabilize. None of that happened. Seed prices kept climbing, farmer debt kept climbing. The only thing that stabilized was corporate profit margins. But wait, if these companies have such a stranglehold, why are they pushing so hard on patent enforcement? Why sue a 75-year-old man for $84,456 when your company makes billions? Why spend hundreds of thousands in legal fees to crush Vernon Bowman? Because the entire business model depends on one thing. Farmers must never be allowed to escape the subscription. The moment farmers can replant seeds, the revenue model collapses. That is why Bayer spent millions in legal fees to crush Vernon Bowman. It wasn't about the money he owed. It was about sending a message to every other farmer in America. You do not own what you grow. We do. And the Supreme Court agreed.
The financial pressure this creates is not theoretical. It shows up in bankruptcy filings. U.S. farm bankruptcy filings in the Midwest increased 8% in 2023. That is the highest level since 2010 during the last agricultural debt crisis. The rate mirrors the 1980s farm crisis when 235,000 farmers lost their land. That 1980s crisis had a different trigger. Interest rates spiked under Paul Volcker's Federal Reserve. Farmers who had borrowed heavily in the 1970s, when land values were rising and grain prices were high, suddenly couldn't service their debt. Land values crashed. Foreclosures swept through Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas. Entire towns died. The rural suicide rate spiked. By the end of the decade, American agriculture looked completely different. Family farms gave way to corporate operations. The current crisis has a different mechanism, but the same result. Instead of input cost shock, it's seed prices, fertilizer prices, equipment costs, all climbing faster than commodity prices. Farmers take out loans to cover operational costs. If the harvest is strong and corn prices are high, they break even. If the harvest is weak, or if a global supply glut tanks corn prices, they can't pay back the loan. The bank forecloses. The land gets sold.
While farmers go under, Bayer's crop science division reported $26.4 billion in revenue in 2023. Let that sit for a second. Farmers are filing bankruptcy at 1980s crisis levels. Seed companies are posting record revenue. This is not a market correction. This is extraction. The mechanism is elegant. Seed costs go up every year. Farmers have no choice but to buy them because patent law has eliminated the alternative. They take out loans to cover the cost. If the harvest is good, they break even. If the harvest is bad, or if commodity prices drop, they can't pay back the loan. The bank forecloses. The land gets sold, sometimes to another farmer, often to a private equity firm or a foreign investor. The cycle repeats.
This is why Bill Gates now owns more farmland than anyone else in America. Not because he wants to be a farmer, because distressed farmland is an incredible investment when you know the small operators will keep going under. You buy the land cheap during a distress cycle, You lease it back to industrial operators who can afford the seed subscriptions and the equipment financing. You collect rent. You never touch a tractor. You never risk a bad harvest. You just own the dirt. The same pattern happened in the 1980s. Big operators and institutional investors swooped in during the foreclosure wave. By 1990, the structure of American agriculture had fundamentally changed. It is happening again, but this time the pressure is coming from seed costs, not interest rates. And this time, there is no policy lever to pull. The Fed can lower interest rates. The government cannot force Bayer to lower seed prices. Patent law prevents competition from emerging, and the legal framework makes it nearly impossible to fight back. Because once the Supreme Court decided that genes can be patented the same way machines can be patented, the game was over. Saving seeds is now the legal equivalent of software piracy. Farmers are not growers anymore. They are licensees. They do not own their crops. They license the genetics. Every season.
The downstream effects hit you faster than you think. When seed costs rise, farmers either absorb the cost and go broke, or they pass it on. Guess which one happens? Corn prices go up, soybeans go up, wheat goes up. That flows into every processed food in the grocery store. Bread, cereal, meat because livestock eat corn and soy, eggs, milk, everything. You are paying the patent tax every time you buy groceries. You just don't see the line item. The question you should be asking is this: if 4 companies control 60% of the seeds and farmers legally cannot opt out, what happens when those companies decide to raise prices another 650%? What happens when they decide certain seeds are only available to operators who meet minimum acreage requirements, shutting out small farms entirely? What happens when climate change makes drought-resistant seeds a necessity and only Bayer has the patent? You are not insulated from this because you live in a city. Every time seed costs go up, food costs go up. Every time a family farm goes under, your food supply gets more concentrated in the hands of fewer corporations. Every time a patent gets enforced, the knowledge of how to grow food outside the corporate system disappears. Heirloom seeds, the varieties that were common 50 years ago, are vanishing. Seed banks are one of the few places they still exist. If those banks ever fail, we lose genetic diversity that took centuries to develop. This is not a conspiracy. It is a business model, and it is working exactly as designed. If this deep dive helped you see the agriculture system differently, liking the video helps us fund more research like this. Now, regarding that final trap, the real danger is not what has already happened, it is what comes next. Climate change is making farming harder. Droughts, floods, unpredictable freezes. The crops that survive will be the ones engineered for resilience. And guess who owns the patents on climate-resistant seeds? The same 4 companies. Farmers will have no choice but to pay whatever price is set, because the alternative is crop failure. And once you are dependent on patented seeds for survival, you are not a farmer anymore. You are a tenant. You do not own your livelihood. You rent it, year after year after year. Vernon Bowman lost his case in 2013, but the consequences of that ruling are only starting to show up in your grocery bill, in rural bankruptcy rates, and in the consolidation of food production into fewer and fewer hands. The Supreme Court did not just rule against one man. It ruled against 10,000 years of agricultural independence. And if you think this is just a problem for farmers, wait until you see who is buying up the farmland they are losing and what they plan to do with it once they own enough to control entire regional food supplies.